A nombre de la Asamblea, agradezco a la presidenta de Hungría.
Thank you to Hungary for that statement, and I now ask protocol to please accompany His Excellency. Her Excellency.
La Asamblea escuchará ahora.
The Assembly will now hear an address by His Excellency Alain Berset, President of the Swiss Confederation. I request protocol to escort His Excellency.
En nombre de la Asamblea.
On behalf of the General Assembly, it is my honor to welcome His Excellency Alain Berset, President of the Swiss Confederation, and I invite him to address the Assembly.
Président de l'Assemblée générale,
Mr. President of the General Assembly, Mr. Secretary General of the United Nations, ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, we are in a period marked by a succession of crises, by an increasing number of major conflicts in a world full of tension. The challenges that we're confronted with are significant, very significant, and I do think, however, that our mindset and our attitude in terms of tackling them are unwavering. Are we ready to do everything that we possibly can to try to improve the situation? Well, we need to do so in order to combat together various crises, the climate crisis, wars, social conflicts, growing inequalities, and also the weakening of democratic institutions and the ongoing erosion of multilateral structures and multilateralism. Your Excellencies, almost everywhere, protectionism and self-centeredness and looking inwards are making progress, but we know that these things and threats and violence have never provided the slightest solution to problems and inequalities in the world. It's true that we can all see this clearly. We are going through a crisis, most probably the most significant one since the end of the Second World War. The Russian Federation, by launching a war of aggression against Ukraine, has attacked not only a peaceful country, but also has attacked international law and also multilateral structures. What is specific is that this aggression was action taken by a permanent member of the Security Council of the UN, which, according to the UN Charter, nevertheless shoulders the primary responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security. Today, we should reiterate this. The key principles are in the UN Charter, and we, of course, need to seek to uphold the mandate that was conferred upon us in this context. What we see is that it is the poorest and most vulnerable states which would suffer the most if our confidence in the international system should waver. I mentioned the United Nations Charter. That is a cornerstone of public international law. This year, it is the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This is a unique opportunity to reiterate the global consensus enshrined in this declaration. So this is a key point in time to unify and to strengthen the international community. The United Nations, indeed, are the bedrock of peaceful cooperation and mutual trust between states. And I believe there's no doubt these challenges cannot really be overcome through isolated initiatives. Our action has to be joint action. It must be collective action. I'd like to talk now about combating inequalities. Strong multilateral institutions are crucial for combating inequalities, which unfortunately are always exacerbated in crises. Climate change also exacerbates social inequalities and economic inequalities. These inequalities spike not only between countries, but also within countries, whether we're talking about social inequalities, gender inequalities, or economic disparities. I was struck to read recently that over the past 20 years, the income income back between the 10% richest people and the 50% poorest people has doubled. I was also struck when I read recently that inequalities today are as stark as they were at the beginning of the 20th century, before the First World War. Inequalities still, in a disproportionate manner, affect those who are already the most vulnerable in our societies. Inequalities foster instability and populism. Inequality leads to a loss of trust in institutions and in democracy. This vulnerability is a threat to each and every one of us there, both domestically speaking within our countries and internationally. For a long time now, probably for too long, we have believed that defending our interests and protecting the most vulnerable are two different things. We know today that you can't have one without the other. Now, in terms of promoting peace, excellencies, strong multilateral institutions are also crucial here. We have some things that we can focus on together. The new agenda for peace of the Secretary General that stresses a particularly important point, namely that prevention, I reiterate, is the starting point for all peace efforts. Inequalities of access, inequality of opportunity in terms of food, healthcare, employment, property, these lead to conflicts. We need to do everything that we can to ensure that each and every person in each country can fully participate in political, economic, social, and cultural life in their countries. Threats, persecution, acts of violence, those in particular targeting women, in particular those people who are there to defend human rights, all of these need to be resolutely combated. Young people need to have real prospects for development and for prosperity as well. I talked about inequalities, I talked about promoting peace. There's also a key role to be played by multilateral institutions to protect civilians. All armed conflicts are different. However, the common denominator in all of them is an exacerbation of inequality, suffering, and civilian suffering in particular. Thus, strong multilateral institutions are key, including the respect for international humanitarian law. That's a top priority for Switzerland. That respect is at the heart of Switzerland's work within the Security Council. And in this discussion, in this debate, I'd like to remind you that the protection of civilians in armed conflicts is not an option. It is an obligation for all parties to a conflict. Over the past year, I had the opportunity on several occasions to go to countries affected by conflict. In particular, I went to Mozambique and the Democratic Republic of Congo and also Colombia. These contacts with the people affected by conflict highlights the extent to which work on the root causes of conflict is crucial in terms of guaranteeing lasting peace. I was also able to see on the ground the extent to which the full participation of women is crucial to bring a return to peace. This is why my country, Switzerland, is continuing its strong commitment to implement the Women, Peace and Security agenda of the United Nations. This is also why we are continuing to mobilize to ensure the full implementation of all pertinent resolutions here. During armed conflict, the shortage of essential goods and services for civilians cost many more lives than the direct impact of hostilities does. It also exacerbates inequalities and undermines peace returning. In this context, I'd like to stress to you the importance of UN peacekeeping missions. They carry out essential work for the worst affected populations. And in this context, I think that all humanitarian stakeholders should be protected and supported. There are also other stakeholders as well as UN missions. And so in this context, the commitment of the ICRC needs to be strongly defended. The increasing number of crises means that the organization has had to deal with an unprecedented spike in and a worrisome spike in needs. We're the depository of the Geneva Conventions, and we are the headquarters of the ICRC, and so Switzerland is resolutely committed to this humanitarian work. The work of the ICRC is crucial for the protection of civilians. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, I have cited a few examples, and we see that there are numerous huge challenges. We need to see where are our common interests, not certainly in global disorder that some people are trying to promote to their gain, but rather in a renewed global order that guarantees stability, trust, and shared objectives. This is precisely why we need to take a stance. This is precisely why we need to undertake to ensure that this international cooperation thrives. The United Nations doesn't come from nowhere. It embodies the hope, institutionalized hope of a better world. It was an idealistic project. It was born during a different time of war, of brutality and despair. And it is based on the belief that cooperating at the international level is crucial. It is based on the belief that the world can only be better if each and every person shoulders their responsibilities. And it is based on the belief that ultimately what unites nations and what unites people is much, much stronger than that which separates them. This should make us optimistic in a period where there's a lot of pessimism. But this should encourage us not only to strengthen, but also step up our work together at the global level. With this General Assembly, we have a unique opportunity, a rare opportunity to come together to display trust and together to prepare for the Summit of the Future in 2024, to strengthen cooperation on key matters, to address any shortcomings in global governance, and to reaffirm existing commitments. This is in particular the case for the 2030 agenda. It is very interesting to be able to participate in the discussions yesterday. And the SDG summit that did indeed take place yesterday should give us an opportunity to breathe new life into this agenda, because it is nothing less than our shared roadmap for a better future for us all. Let us show responsibility and solidarity to build a fairer, more egalitarian world for not us so much, but for those who are going to come after us, for future generations. And we must say this is a responsibility that we have to shoulder. It can't be delegated. This is our responsibility. Thank you.
En nombre de la Asamblea,
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Swiss Confederation for the statement just made, and I request protocol to escort His Excellency. The Assembly will now hear an address by Her Excellency Nataša Pirc Musar, President of the Republic of Slovenia. I ask protocol to escort Her Excellency.